Hello, everybody. It is great to be here today. This is the premiere show of Rendai Presents, and I'm your host, Gary Fowler. I'm a serial entrepreneur with over 17 startups under the belt, 37 years with experience. Love artificial intelligence and quantum computing. Been involved in several unicorns. I was on the original management team of Click Software, sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion, and also RUNDAY.AI, an AI HR tech company that I co-founded with Dr. David Yang. We believe that intellectual capacity is evenly spread around the world, but opportunities are not. With that, I've got the incredible guest and my partner, Sanjay Bhatia. He's an AI and analytics architect and investor, Runday AI founder, investor at Zenda, FitMatch, CallRail, Formidium, PWL, CoolLeaf, and he's a yogi master. So he's from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. He's got a robust background. And today we're going to talk about the global impact of technology and specifically generative AI. Hi, Sanjay. How are you doing today?
Hey there. Happy Thursday. Glad to be here.
Great to have you here. So tell me a little bit about it. So how in the world did you go from the Georgia Institute of Technology and come up with Izenda? What was that? Did you wake up one day and say, oh, I'm going to create this company called Izenda? How was that?
Almost. I'd previously been at Microsoft and Trilogy. Went back to Georgia for grad school. I really just wanted to travel the world. So did some study abroad trips, lived in places like Japan and Australia and Paris, and then started doing some contracting work when I got back to the States. And was working with Corfac International, and they had a very unique way they were doing real estate for industrial and commercial purposes. But the challenge was that they couldn't really analyze the data. And so, we would have to go to Microsoft reporting services. That took, weeks, and it was very expensive, and they wanted to change things all the time. So we created Izenda as a self-service reporting capability where the users could actually modify their own dashboards and reports themselves through a web interface. And then we partnered with Microsoft. They were just then launching their Azure cloud. Now it's a massive thing, but we were one of the first 7 companies that were in this incubation process that Microsoft was doing, and then they helped us sort of launch Izenda, and then we ended up scaling that to millions of users.
Now, what do you do when you have your exit from Izenda? So, what was the first thing you bought?
The first thing I bought was probably I upgraded my place. And so I'd been, I'd always wanted like a massive balcony. And so I got a place where the balcony is bigger than the unit itself. So I have a 300-degree view of the city. I can see the ocean. I can see downtown. I can see the river. And so I just, elevated my, finally got that balcony I'd always wanted.
Yeah, that's great. So you got your balcony, and then, but how was it after you? What year did you do Izenda?
I launched in 2009, and so it was, and then we sold it, 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, and so it was, it was a journey. And I heard a joke the other day at this investor event where, apparently the average marriage is 7 years, but the average exit from investment is 11 years. So you're going to be with your investors longer than your wife these days, apparently. And so it was, it just the entrepreneurs out there, like, you got to commit for a long time.
Sanjay, that's if you still have your shares in your company. Yeah. So those things happen. Yeah, you're right. That's interesting. 7 years. So, you did Radiant. You went to Microsoft, Trilogy. When did you start doing Izenda? What year? 2009 is when you started it.
I started as a services company initially, so started that in 2002, and so just did a number of just sort of did some work for Department of Natural Resources in Georgia. We created a registration system for the state parks. Did work for Corfac and some real estate. So we just we were just doing a lot of services, and then started created a product called Simply Do. It was a data. And that, we weren't really able to sell it. But then that engine evolved into what became Izenda, and we put a user interface around it that the average user could use.
Oh, that's great. And so as you're going down through this journey, right? And you did the pulse wave. What's this thing with the Mandela artist thing? What is that all about?
Oh, I was part of this thing called gratitude training. And, I'd always done art. I'd always done like just these small paintings. Just I didn't have much time, and so I would just do like a 9.5 by 11 size. And so one of the things they were, encouraging is to go big. So whatever your hobby is, your thing is, go big with it. So I started doing these giant paintings that were like 16 square feet. On
60 square feet painting. Where did you
Yeah,
put them?
4x4s and 4x6s. And I just went from these tiny piece of paper size paintings to just doing giant things. Actually, I do it on fleece material, so it was an accident the first time. So I was just painting, and there was like just a fleece on the couch, and I dropped some paint on the fleece, and I just kind of saw what that looked like, and I liked it. So I kind of made that my medium. And then when this event happened, it was a charity event, and so I created like 12 pieces in a month to raise money for these foster homes in Fort Lauderdale.
And did it help?
Yeah. No, it was we sold a couple paintings, made some uh helped some kids out, made some money.
No, that's great. And then so Pulse Wave, what was that all about? What made you decide to form Pulse Wave?
Pulsewave was a an R&D company. It's, it kind of still is an R&D company, and it's just some different ideas that originally had kind of been incubated there that then turn into other companies.
And so as you're going down to this journey, you did a Zenda, and then you did FitMatch. You were the CTO of FitMatch. Tell us a little bit about FitMatch.
Yeah, that was an exciting journey. And so we worked with Rihanna. We partnered with her Fenty brand to launch physical stores. This was in the middle of COVID, at the peak of Omicron. So, everything was very different than what we had anticipated. But we had this type of launch where originally everyone was going to be there for a couple months. We were going to do a fashion show with 5 stores opening. Ended up doing a single store and doing the event at the store. It was one of these launches where it was like the media was going to be there on the opening moment. If the tech didn't work, we're dead. So it was just very, very high pressure, but everything worked flawlessly. Rihanna scanned a couple weeks later. We didn't know she was going to be pregnant at the time, right? So it was a lot of interesting things, but it just showed how AI can really transform an industry. So what we do, we use the LiDAR sensors on an iPhone Pro to, from 6 feet away, do an avatar scan of someone's torso. And what's unique and interesting and innovative was we did it without any cameras. So it's completely private. So there's no video being uploaded to the cloud. It's just using depth sensors to create an avatar of your torso, which we can then accurately measure at far more accurately than a human tape measure. And so that was a lot of fun.
No, that sounds interesting. It sounds incredibly interesting. Actually, what about Formidium? How did that happen?
So Formidium started as we were a hedge fund, and so we were creating algorithms to analyze the market and trade. And then we kind of invested in another company called Sidrania. And then, throughout that evolution, it realized it was easier to sell enterprise software to these funds and scale that than to try to scale the AUM on a hedge fund, the quantitative hedge fund. So we just started crypto and started doing all the compliance, tax administration, investor reporting type of stuff. And then that just then evolved into a number of other types of investment funds. And it's went from 0 to over 20 million in revenue in about 3 years.
No, that's great. And you're still involved in the company.
Yeah, I'm a shareholder. Yes.
And so, you're going, and then what about the call rail? How was that?
So Carl, I was actually a mentor at a Georgia Tech competition at the incubator that I was a part of, years earlier, the Zenda. And so I was a mentor. I got this incredible company. It was these two guys. They'd just barely gotten started. And we would just kind of meet at Georgia Tech, and kind of like saw them go from just, a handful of customers, almost no revenue, to doing, $75 million Series Bs. And they're on their way to eventually be a unicorn.
No, that's fantastic. Okay, now let's go up. Tell us about Runday. What happened? Why did you form Runday? And Runday's an always available generative AI, always on capability to answer questions, to be able to do customer service, etc. But what was the impetus for forming Rendai?
So Rendai is a very mission-driven company. It's almost every day I run into a situation where, recently I had to get my dog groomed, and it took 7 weeks to figure out when we were both available. And so it's almost every day I run into a situation where there's some kind of, a high value appointment. I want to buy something. I want to work with somebody. And it just takes forever to figure out availability. And, really it's AI something that can really transform the world in this way. Rendai started as a project called Rendezvous. It was pre-pandemic, and we were trying to figure out, there was 3 or 4 people how to find the best restaurant to meet at and with the right time. Of course, with the restaurants shutting down, we sort of like shifted gears and started looking at online meetings and things like that. And then really started back up. It was after the launch with FitMatch. I came home, I was exhausted. I asked my girlfriend to schedule a couples massage, and weeks go by and nothing happens. I'm like, what's wrong? Don't you want to go? So I would love to go, but I called them, and then they call me 3 days later, and then you're busy by then. It was just and I realized that things had really changed. Like before pandemic, I'd call same day, get an appointment, but the labor market had really changed. And then looking at demographic trends, I realized it wasn't temporary. So the labor crisis is likely to get worse every year for the next 2 decades. So there's not going to be a population that can do entry-level call center and front desk jobs. These are going to be, people say, is AI going to take my job? That's the wrong century perspective, right? AI is not going to take your job. There's not enough workforce for your company to exist in 5 or 10 years without AI. So Rendai is really on that mission to help companies grow and scale in terms of their business and automating nearly the entirety of the sales funnel.
So there's not going to be enough people to do the job. So we're going to have
nowhere in almost all advanced. Now there's certain places like Africa and India, Mexico, you have population growth, but in nearly all advanced countries, you have major population declines and reduced birth rates. And it's been going on for 30 years.
So you think about digital workers and digital employees. How fast do you think people are going to adopt it and start to feel comfortable with it?
I equate it to outsourcing to India 20 years ago. So people were talking about, oh, India's going to take my job, but that's not really what happened, right? So the companies that outsourced to India or other places offshore, grew and thrived, and they started hiring people everywhere locally, so now you have teams that are a combination of local workers, remote workers that are nearby, nearshore, and offshore. And the companies that embrace that model are the ones that are growing, thriving, creating lots of jobs. And we have a record of, there's never been more jobs in American history. AI is going to be an addition to me to that phenomenon. So you'll have local workers, you'll have remote workers, you'll have offshore workers, and you'll have digital workers, and they're all going to work together. So it's not about replacing one person with an AI. That's just the wrong mindset, in my opinion. It's really like, okay, I have a 7-person team. How can I let them operate like a 50-person team?
No, you're right about it. And so, let's look at some of the things. Sam Altman recently got fired and then rehired. Actually, that could have been in one of those Silicon Valley TV shows. Right?
That was a whirlwind.
So what's going on now with, we've got generative AI. Now you've got ChatGPT, you got Llama, you got Mistral, you've got Claude, you got Bard, you got all this. What's happening with these generative AI models? And the second part is, what do you think really happened with Sam Altman?
So Sam was talking in New York a couple of days ago, and he sort of stressed how proud he was of the team and how he realized he had built a company. Kind of like when Steve Jobs, passed away, he had built a company that could grow and thrive without him. Sam realized he had done that. If he leaves, company's more than fine. It's not dependent on him anymore. And they went from a research lab to one of the most significant tech companies on the planet in under a year. So there were, the board was 9 people. There were changes in the board. That process wasn't, that managed in the right way, just because of how fast everything moved. So it's sort of like, what's the source? So what's concerning everyone, the threat to humanity part, it's not Terminator robots. It's really that we're starting to see that large language models, when they, like say something like ChatGPT, when you don't give it the answer, when it doesn't have a cheat sheet, it has a mathematical capability, kind of like a grade school student. So it can solve math problems, theorems, like someone in high school, maybe advanced, right? So maybe an AP class. But we're starting to see is that these models are able to do mathematical reasoning better than the best human beings. So they're able to find, Google recently found like 2 million new materials we'd never considered before. You're starting to see laws of physics being, or theories of laws of physics being presented by AIs that no one had ever considered before. And so the threat to humanity is, we're on this thing right now. There's a lot of encryption and cryptography and mathematics involved in compressing our video, ensuring it's safe, making sure someone can't hijack this call. And so if the wrong players were able to get access to advanced mathematics very rapidly before the rest of the world can adapt. Now we've been adapting to quantum computing for a while. We kind of understand what it could be, and the algorithms have been adjusted. But if you had but no one thought AI would be doing mathematics at superhuman levels. That was not something we're prepared for. So if somebody accesses this advanced mathematics, and we have new types of math available in cryptography, in the wrong hands, that could disrupt the entire internet, all commerce, banking. And so I think when they say threat to humanity, that's where it's coming from, this sort of threat to our financial sector and the ability to steal money from anyone's bank account, and what kind of chaos could ensue. And maybe suddenly millions of people or billions of people don't have any money. So it's not killer robots. It's really how would humans behave if their financial assets disappeared? And there's a legitimate threat that cryptography that no one's thought about before, that showing up could disrupt the financial sector.
Well, I mean, the thing is, but when we're not making it, the Chinese could be making it, or the Russians, or the Iranians. It's like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like, maybe it's a bad thing to slow it down, right? Because other people aren't slowing it down. And so, and the other thing is, we've got a lot of challenges and problems in front of us. We got global warming. We got to feed more people. We can't increase the number of cattle because of issues with methane gas. So, I mean, there's a lot of challenges. It would make sense that this data that's around us, that we can use this to help humanity live longer and better quality lives. What do you think about that?
Yeah, you see some recent innovations. I mean, however you feel about, the pandemic and the vaccines, it was a miracle of AI that allowed the vaccines to be discovered that quickly. The breakthroughs in nuclear fusion that are happening potentially could, if they hold up, they might be the next Nobel Prize. Without AI, those would not have happened. So we're seeing these major breakthroughs in vaccines, in material science, in energy generation, that we probably would still get them 30, 40, 50 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
But we were able to compress decades into months with the most advanced generative AI. So we're going to see a very really a renaissance. I think it's not just an innovation cycle. It's a new renaissance where this new AI plus the new AI fused with other industries, medicine, material science, that is going to create a type of world we hadn't really started thinking about. For me, I think healthcare is going to be one of the areas. Imagine having an AI agent swarm, or orchestration framework that has every medical specialist on that team helping you diagnose what's wrong with you and giving access to that to everyone on the planet. So you don't have to wait, so hard to get an MRI or to get, a referral to the right specialist these days. What if you didn't need any of that, and the AI could point you in the right direction, and then also know the availability? That's kind of the Runday part of it, is know the availability of these experts and say, hey, this process can be shortened, and guess what? One of the best experts in your area is available 4:00 tomorrow. You can, we can book that appointment. And they take your insurance. So compressing, maybe a 3 to 6 months process into minutes or seconds.
Now, can Runday do that today?
Runday is not, it's not a medical expert at all. It would be connecting to other systems to do some of that, but it can do the scheduling part of it. So for things that are simpler, like medical spas, if you want to get a Botox and a facial, there's different experts that have different legal specializations. It can do the calendar calculus of, okay, well, for a facial, you need this type of person. For this, you need a, maybe registered nurse or a medical person. It can figure out what skills are necessary for the services that you want, when those people are available, at which locations, where to send you when, and do something, even human teams struggle with, like, how do I come in back to back and get 2 or 3 things done? So that's doing that today.
Yeah, no, and you're right about it. That infobesity on that side, being able to schedule, and especially when you get multi-calendar scheduling, which is really difficult. How does that work, Sanjay? What happens if you got 15 people need to schedule things? Can Runday do things like that?
Yeah, so our first patent is actually on this idea that you send a single text message saying, I missed my flight, I need to reschedule my surgery. Now, major surgery has, potentially multiple doctors, nurses, rooms, inventory, equipment, a lot of different resources that are needed to come together to make that surgery happen. And so it can do, we call it calendar calculus. So we find, and based on previous data on when, people don't do surgeries at 3 in the morning unless it's emergency, right? So for something that's not an emergency, it understands the nature of time, and also understands you may not want to commute that far. So is there a facility that's close enough to where you're going to be? So that was our first patent, and we're applying it in a lot of ways.
So you could actually find out what place is close to you. You could geolocate who's closest to you, schedule an appointment. It could be multi-calendar. You could have 3 or 4 people come in at the same
Yeah.
time for a meeting. Well, that's interesting. So, as you go down through it, what's going to happen? They got these large language models like we talked about, Bard and Claude and Llama. How do these things working together as a team? What kind of problems are they going to be able to solve, Sanjay?
Well, different ones are efficient at different things. Some models are more versed towards advanced mathematics, right? Some are more oriented toward, creating content for marketing. Others are more, like Grok is more, kind of more visceral and kind of funnier if you want to write comedy. So different ones are just like if you were to build a team, to do anything, right? You want to build a rocket, or you want to just create a marketing team for a new campaign. You would have different people with different skill sets. So orchestration is all about whether it's specialized version of the same model or different model, reducing the cost, increasing the efficiency, and also that balance of accuracy. So if you have 2 models that were developed in very different ways, them checking each other creates a net result that's potentially far better than either one. Sometimes the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
So what about things like bias?
So there's less bias when you have that diversity in models. So the models are potentially going to have bias, but they're going to have different bias. So it cancels out when they work together. When you have almost a GAN framework where you have one being a generator of content and one being a discriminator, where anything that senses bias is not going to go into the final result.
In this world, look at all the data that's around us and all the challenges we have to be able to face. And having these tools that can help us make sense of this world really democratizes opportunity for all of us. Those are some of the things we need to talk about. And, what's the direction? What do you think is going to happen over the next 2 to 5 years with generative AI?
The next couple of years are going to be very interesting. And so what we're seeing is things moving toward multi-model, where you're not just doing text to text, you're generating 3D objects. That's sort of the next innovations that we're seeing right now is, like text to world. So we're also seeing, augmented reality become part of reality. Meta just released the Quest 3. Apple's releasing their Pro Vision. And so these avatars are going to start becoming characters in your household, as weird as that sounds. And so you'll be able to refurnish your home through a prompt. So you create a prompt, it has the model of your home. It can generate, different art, maybe scenery. Maybe you want your window to look like you're at the beach and you're not at the beach. So you're going to see this interesting fusion of augmented reality and artificial intelligence, where you can generate things like worlds, things like objects. I'm excited in the world of fashion also, how you could create you could create a runway show of you wearing potentially all the different garments that are on that runway show. things like that are going to start happening, where you see this fusion of different models, different ways of thinking in the real world, the artificial world, and those things coming together. And there's going to be use cases like that, like, having an AI avatar talk to you at your dinner table that, we haven't quite seen yet. That's going to start happening next year as the augmented reality becomes more commonplace.
And what about being able to go down through like matchmaking to be able to find the right kind of person? Do you think these kind of AI tools can help us to be able to do those things?
Yeah, actually, one of our first clients is using Runday over WhatsApp to have a very long and detailed conversation with clients and what they're looking for, with their history, and then using different algorithms to match them up in a way that works better. It's interesting, in places like India, they have a lot of matchmakers, and one of the things they do is they ask about the family. They make sure there's family compatibility first. And so, and best practices like that may apply to certain people.
They actually go down through and find somebody for you.
Yeah, that's their job, to find somebody that's going to be a lasting partner. And often people, who need that, haven't done it through. If you look at the dating apps today, they're almost run they're all owned by the same company for the most part. They're almost like operate like a casino. And so, people are looking for alternatives in matchmakers that can scale. I mean, matchmakers are traditionally extremely expensive. And so the cost has been prohibitive for most people, but AI is allowing these interviews, some of these, these research projects that are necessary, the background checking, these elements of that funnel for matchmaking can be automated in such a way where the human matchmakers are involved, but they're doing just the most important parts of that, and not all the busy work involved in all the filtering and clearing.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that's the problem is we got mundane tasks and we need these tools to be able to help us. We're coming to the top of the show. Sanjay, what do you think? So we have a lot of startups that are listening, a lot of investors. What are your words of wisdom to those investors and also to the startups that are out there in terms of the market and how they can participate?
I think just, think really big. I mean, think in terms of, this is a transformational renaissance, the likes of which if you're younger, we haven't seen in your lifetime. And it's one thing to, slap some APIs together, make something that looks cool, but how is this really going to impact 1 billion people? Because that's the scale of what we're talking about. Like, we're thinking about tens of millions of businesses, serving billions of consumers over at Runday. It's like, what's that renaissance perspective that's going to affect, a fraction of the globe? I think the companies that are thinking that way, those are the companies on that mission and that vision that are going to thrive in the future.
No, that's great. And what's the best way to get a hold of you? So if somebody wants to reach out, LinkedIn, what's the website? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah. Runday.ai. So like Sunday with an R. And my email is Sanjay, SANJAY, at Runday.AI.
Thanks, Sanjay, for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. We appreciate it, Sanjay. To everybody out there, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us for an exciting premiere edition of Runday.AI Presents. My name is Gary Fowler, and I'm your host. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. And I'll be back at you again in a couple of weeks with another exciting edition. Take care, everybody. Take care, Sanjay.
Take care. Happy holidays.